Here are 12 techniques that you can use from one single watercolour brush. Now this is a size 4 brush by Rosemary & Co. It's the XP Series 366, just out of interest. And the first thing I'm going to show you is how to do fine lines. Now fine lines, I use that a lot with my paintings. So what I'm going to do, get some paint first of all. Let's go for some purple, shall we? There we go. Load that brush. And as I load it, I'll pull that brush away like so. Then I get a little bit of kitchen roll and give it a tap or two on some kitchen roll like that. Then what we do, we can just very lightly, using the very tip of the brush, paint a very fine line. Now this is a size 4, but I normally use something as small as a size 00. So you can get some really fine lines by using something like this brush here, look. Now the good thing about this particular brush is that it's got a very fine tip, and because it's got a fine tip, as you can see, you can create some very, very fine marks. So you can imagine doing something like whiskers or grass blades or anything like that, not in purple of course, but just give you some general idea on what you can do. But you've got to make sure they don't overload it. Now the good thing about a size 4 is that it's got a good body within the brush, in other words it holds a lot of paint. As long as it's not too overloaded, like that, you find that you'll not achieve a fine line. You see what I mean? And I'm not using a lot of pressure there either, so I'm barely touching the paper, even with a fully loaded brush. So it goes to show what you can do with hardly any paint on the brush. And that is how I would work with fine lines, by using a size 4 brush with a very, very fine tip. Yeah. Another thing you can do is thick lines. Really? Yeah, honestly, thick lines. So let's give that one a try. Let's go for some blue this time now, shall we? Let's get a bit more water in there. Yeah, something like that will do. So you want to fully load that brush. And I mean fully load it. Okay, here we go. Ready? Thick lines. And this is where, with a thick line, you can really kind of put a bit more pressure on that brush, like so. Look at the way it breaks apart on the texture of the paper. So this is a really good way if you want to fill in certain areas by applying that weight like that to get a nice thick line. And that's as simple as that. So applying more pressure, so all you're doing all the time here, look, to create those thicker, wider lines there. So it's all about the pressure within the brush. So if I just come off that pressure, if I get more paint on there, I come off that pressure, get a finer mark to begin with. Yes, it's like that one over there, because I've overloaded that brush. So you can still achieve very fine marks with a fully loaded brush. Not as fine as these, of course. So it's all about how much paint you load within those bristles. What about thick and thin lines? Let's move my palette around a little bit, look. Let's go for some red. Yeah, something like that'll do. Thick and thin, how do you do that? Load it up, give it a roll as you pull away like that, so I'm kind of twisting it as I'm pulling away from the mixing palette. Give it a couple of taps on some kitchen roll, and then what we're going to do is create a tapered line. So it's going to be tapered to begin with, so very fine to begin with. And then you gradually increase the pressure on the brush like so. Then ease off that pressure like that. Let's say, for example, we did that in green. Can you see what I'm going to do now? So a little bit of green like that. Let's create something like a leaf shape. Okay, so very lightly touch the paper, then increase that pressure, then come off that pressure. And straight away, you've got a leaf shape. I know. As easy as that. Let's do that again, shall we? But this time we'll make it slightly wider. So increase the pressure. Come off the pressure, like that. Do the same again. Remember, tap it a couple of times. Start from the other side. Increase the pressure. Come off that pressure. Just a bit in the middle. And there's a nice leaf shape. Just by working with a tapered line like that. Yeah. It's also handy, by the way, working with tapered lines like that. Let's go for some blue. If you wanted to, and you're working on a seascape, you can actually increase the marks like that to create shapes that you can see within the sea. Think about water all the time, and you can see this working already just by making 3 different areas like that. Look, see that? Just by thinking about water. What you need to do with something like that, working with this technique, is very lightly touch the paper, increase the pressure, keeping it horizontal as well, then come off that pressure again. Vary the length of the marks, vary the thickness of the marks, so they're not all the same, like so, and there you go. And then put a few little dashes in between as well. And there's a very quick C shape, very, very quick indeed, but it's also fairly effective, isn't it? I like that. Oh, and by the way, if you're doing something like this, make sure that the marks that are higher up are smaller so they appear further away. So slightly thicker, thinner, thinner. Increase the pressure, come off the pressure, like so. All the way to the horizon, something like that. And that's all by using this tapered line idea like that. Now, another one is dry brush. Now, when you're looking at a colour, so I get something like, I don't know, should we go for, we've done purple. Let's go for an orange. There we go. Let's go for that one. Yeah. Now, dry brush is as it states. What you need to do is take most of that paint off that brush. So I'm going to really give it a good old drying like that, but not washing that brush out. Then using the side of the brush, what you can do, just catch the texture of the paper. You just see that on the screen, can't you? Only just see it like that. Get a little bit more paint on there, shall we? Let's try a little bit more. Because I'm using a cold pressed paper, it will pick up the texture of the paper by doing this. So say for example you're painting something like a rock. Yeah, let's try that, shall we? There we go. Take most of the paint off. So if you're painting a rock, watch out for the spillages. There we are. The brush on its side again, and you're going to catch the texture of the paper whilst you're painting a rock, like this. See that? So now we've got ourselves a lovely rock shape. Just very quickly put a slightly darker base down there, look, why not? Very quickly creating a rock shape by using the texture of the paper. You've also got to consider the darker side as well, so you're going to go over another side like that. So you've got a slightly darker side to that rock as well, using the side of the brush again. So you can imagine what it would look like as well using different colours, using this dry brush technique. A little bit of Payne's grey. There we go, so we've got a slightly shaded side there, just by creating a rock using a dry brush technique. There you go. A very simple rock. Obviously you can go around that with some more detail now, put more detail within that, and really make it look very rocky indeed. And a few grass blades around the edge as well. And that's a little bit about using a dry brush technique. Now all these techniques I'm showing you today, you need to practice that. If you're a complete beginner, practice on some scrap watercolour paper, anything like that. Just so you've got some general idea on how these techniques work. Because you'll find that a lot of these techniques, in fact most of them, you will use within your watercolour paintings. So well worth practicing these ideas, okay? What about a really wide line? So instead of just fully loading it, like we did there, and increasing the pressure, what about using the side of the brush? Let's go down here now, shall we? The side of the brush, like this. Ready? Keeping it really, really low. So instead of having your brush sort of that angle there, like 45, 50 degrees, something like that, you're going to really lower it down like that. Okay, so using near on the side of the brush, and then creating a thick band of paint, like so. Just a really good way of filling an area very quickly. I'm going to get some green. Very quickly like that, by using the side of the brush. But that's really handy if you've got a very long bristle brush like this one here. Because some of my detail brushes are very short bristles, they really are. But that's just another way of filling in an area really, really quickly. Just by using the side of the brush like this. There you go, look. Bit of orange. That's nearly dry brush on there as well, isn't it? Yeah. Please click on that like and subscribe button down below. Because when you do that, there's a good chance that you shouldn't miss one of my paintings, and also will help my video be seen by more budding artists just like yourself. Now one of the techniques I use on a regular basis within my detail paintings, like this one here, is called stippling. Now stippling is a really good technique because what you can do, you can create some very, very fine dots, very fine marks. So I get a little bit of Payne's grey, for example. It's quite watery in there at the moment. And all you're simply doing is using the tip of the brush to tap on the surface of that paper. That's all I'm doing here. What you do need to do, I can't show you this on the camera because my hand will be in the way, but what you do need to do is have your brush nearly vertical when you're doing this. Because if you do it on a slant, like I'm doing here, what can happen? You end up with a tapered line like that. I'll over-exaggerate it a little bit. Okay? When you're kind of tapping down. Don't tap too hard either. But if you've got it more or less vertical, which you can't see now, I know you can't see it, you find you'll end up with some very, very fine marks, and also depends on how much paint you've got on that brush as well. Now I use this technique a lot within my paintings, I really do. Stippling is very, very handy to create texture within a rock, for example, like over there, but also within skin, within fur. I also use it a lot if I'm painting texture within wood, just by stippling like this lot. Because what you can do when you're working with a stippling technique, is get a little bit more paint, you can increase the amount of dots in one area, like I'm doing here now, just starting to. It's quite small on the screen, I know. Keep increasing those dots. Try not to create those long lines like that, okay? Really close together. And the further apart they go, the lighter the area will look. So again, if you're working on bark texture, something like that, you find that working with a stippling technique can create more of a rounded feel or graduated feel to that area. And then you'll ease off those marks when you get to those lighter sections like that. See that? So it's gone dark around them, go even darker if we wanted to as well, just by using tiny, tiny dots all the time. So it's very handy, as I said, to create texture within a painting. It really is. And that is a stippling technique. Now, one of the techniques I like to use is called splattering. And I'm laughing at this because it's a really good fun way of kind of working with your paintings. It really is. It's also very, very messy, so bear with me a minute. Okay, let's get some scrap watercolour paper, which I've used before, to cover up my painting. Any scrap paper that you get from your printer, anything like that, always save it because it comes in handy to kind of cover up areas like this. Alright, now I'm going to get some paint. Here we go, ready for this. All splattering is as it states, you're going to splatter some paint. So you can use your finger like this and splatter the paint that way. This is a really good way when you're working with something like a gravel path, pathways, rock texture, wood texture, skin texture. Imagine painting a lizard and you need all them fine dots within the lizard's skin. This is also a very good technique for that as well. So what you can do, instead of using your finger to tap it on, get another brush and do it that way. Now, depending on the amount of paint on that brush will determine the size of those splatter marks. You can see down here, now we're out of paint, look how fine those marks are. See what I mean? Really, really fine. So you can imagine what you can do. If you get another colour, let's get some brown in there. It's got to be fairly watery though. That's just loaded, so therefore the splatter marks will be wider, a bit bigger, they'll be really chunky on there. But then I start to run out of paint and you can see it gets really, really, really fine. And keep working in one area like that to create all these splatter marks. But again, that's just working with one brush. Just using your finger, I know, I've used another brush to kind of tap it on. You can use anything to tap it on. It doesn't have to be a brush. A block of wood, there you go. Anything. So that, as you can see, is how to create splatter marks using just that one brush. Now there's one technique which I often do with my brushes, and that's using the chiseled edge. But how do you kind of create a chiseled edge with something which has got a very fine point like that one there? Let me show you. All I do, should we get some black? Yeah. You're going to load the brush like that. Load it. And using your fingers, get a very dirty finger that way around, you got yourself now a chiseled edge like that. See that? So that just now means that you can work with fine lines even if your brush is worn. So if I had a worn brush and the tip isn't very good, flatten that brush out like that. And by flattening that brush out, yes, you can get some very fine marks like that as well. That's something I should have said before. Kind of splay them out and work with like a fan brush idea. Oh, there's another technique going on there. But you can also use it as a chiseled edge as well to kind of create wider and thinner marks. So just try that again, look. So you're going to tap it into the paint like that and flatten that brush out. So therefore you've got wider marks. A bit more paint, go on. Let's be daring. Wider marks like that's better, look. And also fine marks as well, just by flattening that bristle out. There you go, look. See, it's quite wide there and flatter that way around. And I completely forgot that you can create different effects as well by pinching them bristles together like that. Look, I'm going to put my hand in front of the camera so you can't see me. What you can do is create all sorts of lines like grass blades by spraying them bristles out like that and doing it that way around. I can't really show you on camera because my hand's in the way, but you've got the general idea. Just by working with one fine brush. So there you go, that's a bonus technique today by spraying them bristles apart to create more of a fan brush shape. If you haven't got a fan brush, you can create one just by doing that. So there you go, a bonus tip today, and one which I completely forgot about. Now people say to me, Paul, what else can you use this for? Well, you know, I'm going to put a block of paint down first of all. Alright, let's put a block of paint down there. Just onto the paper. I don't know, whatever colour you want to use. Something like that. I'm going to give this a quick dry with a hairdryer. A bit more colour in there, just slightly darker. And I'll show you exactly what I mean. And this is all about the lifting off process. How do you lift paint off using one brush? Do you need a special lifting off brush for it? Well, not really, you don't know. Okay, grab some cleanish tissue, bit of kitchen roll there, it's nearly clean as you can see, not far off. Dampen that brush and lightly pull it through some kitchen roll. So all I've done again, I'll show you again, look. Completely wetted the brush through, as you can see, I've got water dripping off the bottom there like that. Just very lightly just pull it through, barely squeezing that at all. What you can do is lift some details off by using the tip of the brush. So I'll show you what I mean. You can buy special brushes to do this with as well. Then lightly dab it, and there's one detail off there already. Can you imagine creating something like grass blades again, anything like that within that kind of weird shape I've got here? Or say for example you wanted to kind of take off a larger area, you can do. Again, clean brush, make sure you keep washing that brush when you do this though. Otherwise you're transferring paint from one place to another when you're doing that. I don't know, say for example I want to make this a lighter side around here. A little bit of water there like that, and then lift. And I'll just lighten that one section very, very quickly indeed. Or let's say I wanted a finer mark, so I'm going to go with little tiny dots now, like so. And I've got 3 tiny dots, just by using the lifting off technique, like that. There you go. Now this would depend on the paint that you use, because we know that some paints can be staining, and those staining pigments you find harder to lift. As long as you keep going over that same area time and time again, then you can get some very, very fine marks like that. And that's all the lifting off technique is. Very lightly using the tip of the brush, lift off the paint, keep washing that brush out as I mentioned, keep giving it a gentle wipe like that so it's not too soaked in water, then very lightly lift off whatever you want to take off that paper like that. And dab it. That's very subtle, that one, wasn't it? Very subtle indeed. And that is a lifting off technique. And it's a technique which I use on a lot of my paintings, especially when I want to create highlights within, say, fur or feathers. Now, another technique I use when I'm working with watercolours is softening down the details. I do that a lot between each layer of, say, feathers or fur for my animal wildlife paintings. I'm going to get a little bit more water on this brush and take most of it off. Oh, went really posh then. Ew, hello. Using the side of the brush, you can very lightly soften those details down a little bit. I do this sort of to knock the details back a little bit, especially when I intend on putting another layer of detail over the top. That's all I'm doing here, look, just very lightly going over the top with a damp, clean brush. Just knocks it back. So when that's nice and dry, I can add further detail over the top of that then. So for example, if I wanted to, I don't know, the splattering area down here, soften some of this area down, I can very lightly go over the top, like that, with a clean, damp, not soaking wet brush. So if I just soften this half down here, it's going to merge the colours a little bit. Very lightly knocks it back. The more you kind of rub over the top, the more the colours underneath will disperse. Can you imagine doing something like a star constellation or something like that, like a galaxy? You could potentially use this method for that as well. I know. Anything like that will do. Just by softening down those details. So I do that quite a lot, as I mentioned, within my watercolour paintings. So anything like this, very lightly with a clean brush, soften it back just a touch, all ready to receive another layer of detail over the top. And that is a little bit about softening down details. Now that's 10 tips plus an extra one which I'd shown you around there when we fanned out our bristles like so, to turn your brush into a fan brush and create those very fine details for something like grass blades. So that's that one down there. Blending edges. Now, again, something I do quite a lot with my paintings. What I'm going to do, to pick an edge, any edge will do. What about this blue one here? Yeah, that'll be a tricky one to blend, being blue. Let's work on that one. I'm going to put a little bit of water just beyond that edge like that. You can barely see it, I know. Then using tiny circles, take most of that water off your brush though. Blend that edge a little bit like that, just by tiny circles, just tickling it as you work your way down. So I'm dragging the paint away from that edge, softening that edge down a little bit. Clean brush again, and very lightly, just tidy it up around the very edge of that. You can see I've just softened one edge. So that's the way I would blend an edge, by using just a damp, not soaking wet though, a damp, clean brush. In fact, I'm going to show you one more now. Look. Using a water mixture, whatever colour you want to do, I'm going to do some glazing. And all glazing is going over the top of dry paints like this lot. It's all nice and bone dry on there, with another colour over the top. So if I wanted to create this into more of a rock shape, I can glaze over the top like that. Very lightly though, because you don't want to disturb the paint underneath. Just to create additional shapes within this odd kind of shape of what you got on the paper here. That just gives you a general idea what glazing is about. Put another colour over the top of already dry paint to create more depth to that colour. And also could change the colours as well. So that will now give you 12 different techniques on working with one single round watercolour brush, this one being a size 4. Now, if you want to see more techniques and tips all to do with watercolours, have a look at the link to the top right hand corner of the screen there, you know the one, just that one there. Okay, I'll see you there.